Akkadian Empire. The rise and fall. 1. The forgotten empire. Over 4,000 years ago, in a land known today as Iraq, between two mighty rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, a great empire rose from the dust. It was a land called Mesopotamia, known as the cradle of civilization. Here, humanity first built cities, created laws, and learned to write. In this land of ancient wisdom, one empire stood taller than all the rest, the Akkadian Empire. Founded around the year 2334 BCE by a charismatic leader named Sargon of Akkad, the Akkadian Empire was not only powerful, it was the very first empire in human history. Before the Romans, before the Persians, even before the Egyptians built their pyramids, the Akkadians forged a vast empire that spanned from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. Yet today, this once mighty empire is largely forgotten, overshadowed by later civilizations that rose after its collapse. Sargon, its founder, began as a humble servant who rose to power through bravery, skill, and determination. Under his rule, the scattered city-states of Mesopotamia became united for the first time. He conquered cities, built roads, and established a government structure that would serve as a model for future civilizations. Sargon's legend inspired kings and emperors for generations to come. But how did this empire rise so rapidly, thrive for generations, and then suddenly collapse into ruin? To understand its story, we must journey back in time to bustling cities built from clay, powerful kings, commanding mighty armies, and ordinary people who farmed the fertile plains, traded precious goods, and worshipped gods who controlled every aspect of life. This is the story of the Akkadian Empire, a tale of ambition, triumph, and tragedy. A story of humanity's earliest attempt at creating something larger than themselves. An empire whose echoes still whisper across time. Tonight, let us travel back together across centuries and millennia to rediscover the forgotten empire of Akkad, to walk its streets, to meet its kings and queens, and to witness firsthand the rise and fall of history's first great empire. Settle in comfortably, take a deep breath, and let your mind drift gently back through the corridors of time as we begin our journey. 2. Mesopotamia before Akkad, cities of clay and conflict. Long before the rise of the Akkadian Empire, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers was already bustling with life. Mesopotamia, meaning the land between rivers, was fertile, lush, and abundant. It was a place of great potential. Farmers planted crops of barley, wheat, and dates, and herders tended flocks of sheep and goats. The rivers provided life-giving water, but they also brought unpredictable floods, forcing the people to work together to manage the land. As communities grew, the first great cities emerged. Cities like Ur, Uruk, Lagash, and Kish sprang up along the riverbanks, each governed independently by kings and priests who claimed divine authority. These cities were built from sun-dried bricks made from river mud, with mighty walls protecting them from invaders. Temples towered above the city skyline, dedicated to powerful gods and goddesses who the people believed watched over them day and night. Each city-state developed its unique culture, language, and customs, but they shared many things in common, such as a love for music, poetry, and elaborate festivals. Life revolved around the great temples where priests offered daily rituals and merchants traded goods from faraway lands. Yet beneath this vibrant culture lay a world filled with competition and rivalry. The cities constantly vied for control of farmland, water sources, and trade routes. Warfare was common, and powerful kings raised armies to defend their cities and attack their neighbors. Around 2500 BCE, the city-state of Kish rose in prominence. It controlled key trade routes and commanded respect from neighboring cities. But its power was never absolute. Rival cities like Uruk, famous for its mighty walls built by the legendary king Gilgamesh, often challenged its dominance. The frequent conflicts had a lasting impact. Cities became heavily fortified with massive walls, watchtowers, and armed guards always ready for battle. Military innovation flourished with new weapons and tactics constantly developed to outsmart opponents. Trade between the cities brought wealth, but also jealousy. Craftsmen and merchants exchanged textiles, pottery, gold, silver, and precious stones, but disputes over trade rights often erupted into violence. The land was prosperous, but divided. No single ruler could unify Mesopotamia. Each city-state guarded its independence fiercely, unwilling to submit to the authority of another. Then came Sargon of Akkad. Born into this turbulent world around 2370 BCE, Sargon would rise from humble beginnings to forever change Mesopotamia. As a young man, he observed firsthand the chaos of constant warfare and the inefficiencies of divided rule. He dreamed of uniting these fractured lands into a single powerful empire. In a land where cities built from clay stood in perpetual conflict, where kings and priests battled fiercely for dominance, the stage was now set for an unprecedented era of unity and empire building. Little did the people of Mesopotamia realize their way of life was about to transform forever. The age of city-states was nearing its end, and the age of empires was about to begin. 3. Sargon of Akkad. From humble origins to powerful leader. Around the year 2370 BCE, a child was born whose destiny would reshape the ancient world. His name was Sargon, a man whose origins were humble but whose ambition and determination knew no bounds. Legend says Sargon was born into a simple family along the banks of the Euphrates River. According to an ancient tale, his mother placed him in a reed basket and set him adrift in the river, entrusting his fate to the gods. Miraculously, the baby was rescued by a gardener in the royal court of Kish, one of Mesopotamia's most powerful city-states. Growing up as an outsider within the bustling city of Kish, Sargon learned the hardships of ordinary people. He lived among laborers, farmers, and craftsmen, absorbing the stories and struggles of those around him. He saw firsthand the chaos of constant warfare, the suffering caused by divided cities, and the wastefulness of endless rivalry. As a young man, Sargon became known for his bravery, intelligence, and exceptional physical strength. His skills soon drew attention from Kish's royal court. Eventually, he rose to become the cupbearer for King Ur-Zababa, one of the most trusted and influential positions in the royal household. But Sargon's ambitions stretched far beyond serving wine to a king. He dreamed of ruling not just one city, but all of Mesopotamia. Secretly, he began to build alliances, gathering loyal followers among soldiers, craftsmen, and merchants. His charisma and vision inspired devotion among those who believed that only unity could bring peace to the region. Around 2334 BCE, Sargon seized his moment. Kish's king, Ur-Zababa, was growing increasingly paranoid, sensing threats around every corner. Suspicious of Sargon's growing popularity, Ur-Zababa attempted to eliminate him first by sending him on dangerous missions, and later by plotting his assassination. Each time Sargon miraculously survived, seemingly protected by divine favor. Seeing that he could no longer remain in Kish, Sargon decided to take matters into his own hands. He rallied his followers, defected from Kish, and quickly built an army of devoted warriors. With this force behind him, he marched boldly against the city-states of Mesopotamia, determined to fulfill his dream of unity. His military campaigns were swift and decisive. Sargon defeated Kish, his former home, taking control of the city and solidifying his authority. From there, he pushed onward, conquering city after city, overcoming even the mightiest defenses. Uruk, Lagash, Ur all eventually fell to Sargon's unstoppable force. His victories were not merely about strength, but also strategy. He showed mercy to conquered enemies, winning the loyalty of defeated warriors and citizens alike. He allowed local rulers to remain provided they pledged their allegiance. Sargon understood the power of unity through cooperation rather than ruthless domination. By approximately 2330 BCE, the scattered city-states of Mesopotamia had been unified under a single ruler for the first time in history. Sargon established a new capital, Akkad, a magnificent city built specifically to symbolize his centralized authority. Akkad quickly became a thriving center of trade, government, and culture, drawing merchants, artists, and scholars from across the region. The empire Sargon built was unlike anything the world had seen before. It was vast, reaching from the Persian Gulf in the south to Syria and Anatolia in the northwest. Trade flourished, culture blossomed, and stability finally took hold across the land. From his humble beginnings as a child floating helplessly in a reed basket to becoming the first emperor in human history, Sargon's remarkable journey had transformed the world forever. He had turned chaos into unity, division into strength, and laid the foundation for generations of civilization to come. Yet Sargon's vision did not end with conquest. He understood that maintaining an empire required more than armies and victories. Now he faced the challenge of creating a lasting legacy, a system of governance, economy, and culture that could withstand the test of time. 4 military innovations and the creation of an empire. When Sargon united the cities of Mesopotamia around 2330 BCE, he faced the enormous challenge of holding together an empire no one had ever attempted before. The city-states he conquered were diverse, fiercely independent, and accustomed to autonomy. To succeed, he needed more than just ambition. He needed innovation. Sargon transformed Mesopotamian warfare forever. Until then, conflicts between cities had been relatively small-scale. Battles were fought mostly by local militias armed with simple spears and shields commanded by kings or local leaders. But Sargon envisioned something much greater, a professional army capable of maintaining peace and expanding his influence even further. He introduced the first standing army in recorded history. Rather than relying on farmers and craftsmen called up occasionally for battle, Sargon trained and maintained full-time soldiers. These warriors dedicated their lives entirely to warfare, mastering combat skills through constant training drills and military exercises. Discipline became central to Akkadian military strategy. One of Sargon's greatest innovations was the use of advanced bronze weaponry. Akkadian soldiers were among the first to wield bronze swords and spearheads much stronger and sharper than weapons used by their rivals. Bronze was more durable, easier to repair, and significantly increased the effectiveness of Akkadian soldiers in battle. Additionally, Akkadian archers adopted the composite bow, a revolutionary weapon crafted from layers of wood, animal horn, and sinew. This bow allowed greater power and range, enabling Akkadian archers to strike their enemies from unprecedented distances. Battles that had once required close combat could now be decided from afar. Sargon's forces also perfected siege tactics. Mesopotamian cities were protected by massive walls often thought impenetrable. But the Akkadians devised new methods of siege warfare, building sophisticated siege engines, battering rams, and mobile towers to breach defenses quickly and decisively. Cities once believed unconquerable fell one after another. But military innovation alone was not enough. Sargon knew his empire's strength relied on communication and rapid movement of troops. He established a network of well-maintained roads connecting all parts of his empire, enabling messengers, traders, and soldiers to travel swiftly. Information flowed efficiently, allowing Sargon to respond rapidly to rebellions or threats. His army was carefully organized. Each division had clear responsibilities. Infantrymen, wielding bronze-tipped spears and shields, formed disciplined lines. Archers fired volleys from behind these lines, and cavalry units pursued fleeing enemies or conducted reconnaissance. Military leaders were promoted based on merit and loyalty, rather than family ties alone, building trust and effectiveness throughout the ranks. Sargon also recognized the power of psychological warfare. His reputation as an invincible conqueror spread widely, instilling fear and awe in his opponents. Stories circulated of Sargon's divine favor, unstoppable army, and swift justice. Some cities surrendered without resistance, simply out of fear and respect for his legendary military might. In just a few short years, the Akkadian Empire stretched impressively. In the east, it reached into the rugged lands of Elam, modern-day Iran. To the north, it touched territories in Anatolia and Syria. To the west, Akkadian influence extended towards the Mediterranean Sea. Mesopotamia had never known such vast, unified authority. Yet Sargon's ambition did not blind him to reality. He understood clearly that the empire's survival depended on more than just military strength. True stability required governance, economic prosperity, and cultural unity. Conquest was the easy part. The harder challenge lay ahead, creating an empire that could withstand the test of time, uniting diverse peoples under a single lasting authority. And so, even as Akkadian soldiers stood ready to defend the empire's vast borders, Sargon began to establish new systems of governance. He would create laws, administrative structures, and cultural integration that would bind his diverse subjects together. Only then could his empire hope to survive beyond his own lifetime. 5. The empire consolidates political structures and governance. After conquering and unifying the lands of Mesopotamia around 2330 BCE, Sargon of Akkad faced a new and crucial challenge: how to govern this vast territory effectively. Military strength alone could win battles, but holding an empire together required order, administration, and wise governance. Sargon understood the need for a strong central government. To symbolize his authority, he established a new capital city, Akkad, strategically located between the conquered territories. Akkad soon became the political heart of the empire, a bustling city of grand palaces, administrative buildings, temples, and marketplaces. From Akkad, Sargon carefully structured his empire to maintain control over distant regions. He appointed loyal governors known as ensi to oversee individual cities and provinces. These governors were often local rulers who pledged loyalty to Sargon, recognizing the benefits of aligning with the powerful Akkadian ruler. By working through local leaders, Sargon ensured stability and reduced resentment among his diverse subjects. Each governor was responsible for maintaining order, collecting taxes, managing agriculture, and ensuring justice in their region. They reported directly to Sargon and his close advisors, who supervised the empire's overall administration from the capital. Regular reports, carried swiftly by messengers along well-maintained roads, kept Sargon informed of developments throughout his realm. To unify his empire further, Sargon established a standardized system of laws and regulations. These rules were enforced consistently across Akkadian territories, providing clear guidelines on property ownership, trade, family matters, and crimes. For the first time, Mesopotamia experienced a unified legal system, reducing conflict and confusion caused by previously varied local customs. This standardization also extended to measurements, weights, and trade practices. Merchants could now travel and trade freely across Akkadian lands, knowing the same laws and standards applied wherever they went. Trade thrived under this new stability, bringing wealth and prosperity to the empire. Language and communication played a crucial role in Akkadian governance. Before Sargon's reign, Sumerian was the dominant language used in administration and religious ceremonies. However, Sargon promoted the Akkadian language, a Semitic tongue related to modern-day Arabic and Hebrew, as the official language of the empire. Cuneiform, the writing system invented by the Sumerians, was adapted for Akkadian use. Thousands of scribes were trained to write and read official documents, creating an efficient bureaucracy. Official decrees, laws, tax records, and administrative letters were carefully recorded and archived. The use of Akkadian as a common language further bound the empire's diverse peoples together culturally and politically. To reinforce his authority, Sargon carefully cultivated an image of himself as divinely appointed by the gods. Statues, carvings, and inscriptions depicted him receiving authority directly from powerful deities. Religious ceremonies held in temples across the empire regularly celebrated his reign, reinforcing the belief that his rule was both legitimate and divinely ordained. Religion itself became a vital tool for political unity. Sargon respected local religious traditions, but promoted the worship of certain deities across the empire, notably Inanna, also known as Ishtar, goddess of love and war. Temples dedicated to Inanna became focal points for public life festivals and ceremonies that encouraged loyalty and shared identity among Akkadians. Throughout his empire, Sargon encouraged construction projects that symbolized Akkadian greatness. Monumental architecture, palaces, city walls, temples, and statues served as constant reminders of Akkadian power and unity. Roads, canals, and irrigation systems improved daily life, providing practical evidence of the benefits of Akkadian rule. By the end of Sargon's reign around 2279 BCE, the Akkadian Empire stood as an impressive achievement in human governance. His innovative structures of administration, law, language, and religion had successfully bound diverse peoples into a cohesive state. But as Sargon grew older, the question loomed: would the political system he carefully crafted withstand the challenges of succession, internal divisions, and external threats? Only time would reveal whether the empire's impressive unity could survive beyond its legendary founder. 6. The economy of Akkad: wealth, trade, and prosperity. With political structures and administration firmly in place, the Akkadian Empire under Sargon entered an era of unprecedented economic growth. Between roughly 2330 and 2279 BCE, prosperity flowed through the cities and countryside, driven by stability, trade, and efficient management of resources. At the heart of the Akkadian economy was agriculture. The fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers were ideal for growing abundant crops of barley, wheat, vegetables, and dates. Farmers across Mesopotamia thrived under Akkadian rule, benefiting from well-maintained irrigation systems that ensured reliable harvests even in drier seasons. Sargon's administration took great care to manage these canals and waterways, guaranteeing farmers could produce more food than ever before. Surplus crops were essential. With ample harvests secured, communities could support growing urban populations and specialized craftsmen. Grain stores filled warehouses not just as food, but as currency traded widely across the empire. This agricultural surplus allowed Sargon to build and maintain his professional army, support his extensive administration, and fund monumental building projects that enhanced the empire's prestige. Yet agriculture was only one pillar of Akkadian wealth. The empire was strategically located, connecting trade routes between distant regions. Merchants traveled from as far east as the Indus Valley, modern-day Pakistan, and India, exchanging precious goods such as lapis lazuli, gold, silver, and ivory. From Anatolia, modern-day Turkey traders brought timber, copper, and obsidian. This extensive trade network turned Akkad into a bustling center of commerce, enriching merchants and artisans alike. Sargon understood the importance of trade. He carefully maintained and expanded Akkadian control of key trade routes, ensuring safe passage for caravans and traders. Roads were guarded by Akkadian soldiers, offering protection from bandits and rival factions. This security attracted even more merchants and traders, further boosting the economy. Inside Akkadian cities, marketplaces bustled with activity. Merchants from distant lands gathered to sell exotic goods, textiles from Elam, pottery from Syria, precious metals from Anatolia. Artisans and craftsmen flourished, creating beautiful jewelry, intricate pottery, and finely woven cloth. These products were highly sought after across Mesopotamia and beyond, generating enormous wealth and prosperity. Taxes collected by Akkadian administrators were primarily levied on trade and agricultural produce. This taxation funded further improvements to roads, irrigation systems, temples, and administrative buildings. It also allowed Sargon to distribute resources effectively throughout his empire, maintaining loyalty among his governors and subjects. Akkadian cities became centers of specialized industry. Workshops produced advanced bronze weapons and tools, significantly improving the productivity of agriculture and trade. Bronze goods, highly valued for their durability and quality, became key exports, boosting Akkadian prestige far beyond Mesopotamia's borders. Sargon's empire was also among the first in history to introduce a standardized system of weights and measurements. Merchants and traders could now reliably assess the value of goods, making transactions quicker, fairer, and more efficient. This innovation significantly reduced disputes and improved the overall flow of trade across the empire. The administration carefully recorded transactions on clay tablets using cuneiform writing to keep track of grain stores, tax payments, and commercial activities. Detailed archives provided valuable insights into Akkadian prosperity and ensured transparency and accountability. These meticulous records were essential for managing an economy that was growing increasingly complex. Cities under Akkadian rule enjoyed prosperity previously unimaginable. Streets filled with bustling crowds, merchants sold their wares, and artisans crafted luxurious goods sought by the wealthy. Public buildings rose impressively, showcasing the empire's immense wealth and sophistication. Ordinary people, too, benefited from the abundance, living more comfortably than ever before. But prosperity brought new challenges. As wealth increased, so did disparities between rich and poor. Merchants, governors, and high officials accumulated immense fortunes, sometimes causing resentment among ordinary citizens. Additionally, maintaining the infrastructure that supported such vast trade networks required continuous investment and vigilance. Nevertheless, under Sargon's capable leadership, Akkadian economic prosperity reached remarkable heights. It was an era defined by growth, innovation, and stability, laying an enduring foundation for future civilizations. As the economy thrived, another aspect of Akkadian culture flourished alongside it: religion. Religious traditions bound together the diverse peoples of the empire, blending their beliefs, rituals, and customs into a shared identity. It was this cultural fusion that would sustain Akkad's unity even as challenges began to appear on the horizon. 7. Religion and cultural fusion in the Akkadian Empire. As the Akkadian Empire flourished economically and politically, under Sargon's wise rule, a unique cultural and religious identity emerged. Religion became more than just spiritual belief. It was the glue that bound the empire's diverse peoples together, creating a shared sense of identity and purpose. Before Akkadian unification, Mesopotamia was home to many gods and goddesses. Each city-state worshipped its own patron deity, believing their local god protected their city, granted good harvests, and ensured victories in battle. For example, Uruk revered Inanna, goddess of love and war, while Nippur worshipped Enlil, god of wind and storms. When Sargon unified the empire, he faced the delicate task of blending these diverse religious traditions into one cohesive system. He wisely chose a path of cultural integration, not suppression. Rather than forcing conquered peoples to abandon their beliefs, Sargon allowed them to maintain local gods and rituals promoting respect and tolerance. However, he emphasized the worship of specific deities who could unite the empire culturally and spiritually. At the heart of Akkadian religion stood Inanna, also known as Ishtar. She was revered throughout Mesopotamia, celebrated as both a goddess of love and fertility and a powerful deity of war and conquest. Her dual nature perfectly matched the spirit of Sargon's empire, peaceful prosperity, protected by formidable strength. Temples dedicated to Inanna became focal points across Akkadian cities. Massive ziggurat-stepped temples built from sun-dried bricks towered over cities visible from miles away. These temples were not merely places of worship. They served as centers of culture administration and social gathering, reinforcing Akkadian unity. Festivals and ceremonies honoring Inanna were celebrated widely. People from diverse backgrounds, farmers, merchants, priests, and soldiers, came together in joyful, elaborate celebrations. Music, dancing, poetry, and feasting united communities, bridging gaps between previously separate city-states. Sargon skillfully cultivated a sense of divine favor. He portrayed himself as chosen by the gods to rule, often depicted in artwork, receiving symbols of power directly from deities like Inanna. This divine imagery reinforced his legitimacy and authority, fostering loyalty among his subjects. Beyond Inanna, the Akkadian pantheon blended Sumerian gods with Akkadian deities. Enlil, the Sumerian god of wind and storms, maintained importance, while gods such as Anu, the supreme sky deity, and Ea, the god of wisdom, continued to be widely worshipped. This careful integration of different traditions created a shared religious landscape, inclusive yet unified. Language played a vital role in this cultural fusion. Akkadian became the official language of administration and religious texts, spreading rapidly throughout the empire. Yet Sumerian was still honored and preserved, especially in religious rituals and scholarly writings. Priests became fluent in both languages, allowing traditions to coexist harmoniously. Scribes educated in temples carefully recorded religious hymns, myths, and rituals on clay tablets. These texts, written in cuneiform script, preserved sacred knowledge, spreading Akkadian religious beliefs far and wide. Famous works, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, originating from Sumerian sources, were adapted into Akkadian, becoming central to the empire's shared culture. Religious unity greatly influenced Akkadian art and architecture. Temples were adorned with intricate carvings, statues, and murals depicting gods, goddesses, and sacred myths. Sculptors portrayed Sargon and his successors as divine or semi-divine beings, further reinforcing the idea that Akkadian rule was blessed by heavenly powers. Artisans and craftsmen created ceremonial objects, beautifully carved seals, ornate jewelry, and ritual vessels celebrating religious themes. Such craftsmanship flourished, showcasing the empire's prosperity and cultural richness. Yet religion served another practical purpose: it supported social order. Akkadian religious teachings emphasized respect for authority, lawfulness, and moral conduct. Priests and temples played key roles in settling disputes, administering justice, and maintaining social harmony. Their moral authority helped sustain internal peace across the empire. By skillfully blending religious traditions, Sargon had created something new, a unified culture that respected diversity, yet shared common beliefs. His strategy had succeeded spectacularly. Religion had become a source of strength, unity, and stability for the Akkadian Empire, binding its diverse peoples together. But while Akkadian religion flourished, new challenges loomed. Sargon's reign eventually drew to a close, leaving behind a powerful but increasingly complex empire. The question remained whether his successors could maintain the delicate balance he had so masterfully achieved, or whether divisions, rebellions, and external threats would unravel the empire's remarkable unity. 8. Naram-Sin peak of the Akkadian Golden Age. When Sargon passed away around 2279 BCE, he left behind an extraordinary legacy. He had built the world's first great empire, strong, prosperous, and unified. But the true test of any empire comes after its founder is gone. Could the Akkadian Empire survive beyond Sargon? Could it thrive under new leadership? His immediate successors faced immense pressure to maintain Sargon's achievements. Initially, Akkad struggled. Sargon's son Rimush faced rebellions almost immediately after ascending the throne. His rule was marked by violence as he fought fiercely to re-establish authority. Rimush's reign was brief, troubled, and ended abruptly with his assassination. His brother Manishtushu followed, but also struggled to fully stabilize the empire. It was only under Sargon's grandson, Naram-Sin, who rose to power around 2254 BCE, that the Akkadian Empire truly reached its peak. Naram-Sin inherited his grandfather's charisma, ambition, and military genius. Under his rule, Akkad expanded even further, becoming stronger, wealthier, and more influential than ever before. Naram-Sin's early reign was defined by decisive military campaigns. He swiftly crushed rebellions that had erupted during earlier unstable years. He led his armies far beyond Mesopotamia's original borders, pushing into new territories to the north and east. His conquests stretched from the Persian Gulf to the mountains of Anatolia and the distant highlands of Elam, modern-day Iran. One of Naram-Sin's greatest victories was against the Lulubai people in the mountainous regions northeast of Mesopotamia. This conquest was immortalized in the famous Victory Stele of Naram-Sin, a towering stone monument depicting the king as a heroic warrior ascending a mountain beneath symbols representing the gods themselves. It was not merely a tribute to military victory, but a powerful statement of Naram-Sin's divine authority. Indeed, Naram-Sin elevated himself beyond his predecessors in ways never before attempted. In an unprecedented move, he declared himself a god-king of the four quarters of the world. For the first time in Mesopotamian history, a living ruler openly claimed divine status. This bold act reinforced his authority, elevating his rule to religious devotion. Temples dedicated to his worship appeared throughout the empire, solidifying his position as both political and spiritual leader. Under Naram-Sin, the empire's administration became even more structured and centralized. He enhanced Sargon's administrative reforms, ensuring efficiency across provinces and improving communications. Governors and scribes regularly reported back to Akkad, enabling swift responses to any problems or rebellions. This efficient governance brought renewed prosperity and stability. Economically, Naram-Sin's reign marked the height of Akkadian wealth. He continued to maintain and expand trade networks, ensuring a steady flow of exotic goods and precious materials. Merchants from distant lands visited Akkadian cities, attracted by security, stability, and opportunity. The economy flourished, and the empire's cities became vibrant, wealthy hubs of trade and commerce. Culturally, Naram-Sin sponsored grand architectural projects. Temples, palaces, roads, and public buildings rose impressively, symbolizing Akkadian prosperity. Art and literature thrived, celebrating Akkadian culture and the divine authority of Naram-Sin. Sculptors, poets, musicians, and artists enjoyed royal patronage, creating magnificent works that expressed Akkadian pride and grandeur. Daily life improved dramatically under his rule. Agriculture prospered and food was plentiful. Irrigation systems were expanded, ensuring bountiful harvests even in times of drought. Ordinary citizens enjoyed greater security, wealth, and cultural opportunities than ever before. Yet beneath this golden surface, cracks began to appear. Naram-Sin's divine claims, while impressive, also alienated some subjects, particularly traditional priests, who resented his bold religious declarations. Governors in distant provinces sometimes resented centralized control from Akkad, quietly growing restless under heavy taxation and oversight. Moreover, maintaining such a vast empire was becoming increasingly challenging. Rebellions still occasionally flared, requiring costly military responses. Managing distant territories demanded constant vigilance, draining resources and manpower. Toward the end of Naram-Sin's reign around 2218 BCE, ominous signs began to emerge. Small uprisings grew more frequent, and rival powers from beyond the empire's borders watched closely, sensing vulnerability. Despite these emerging troubles, Naram-Sin's reign represented the pinnacle of Akkadian achievement. Under his leadership, the empire reached its greatest extent and influence. His bold ambition, military success, administrative skill, and cultural patronage had truly ushered in a golden age. But every golden age eventually comes to an end. Soon, internal tensions, external threats, and unforeseen disasters would test Akkadian unity like never before. The empire, so carefully built and brilliantly maintained, was about to face its greatest challenge yet. 9. Daily life in Akkad society and culture. As the Akkadian Empire reached its greatest heights under Naram-Sin, around 2254 to 2218 BCE, everyday life flourished. While history often highlights kings and conquerors, it is the ordinary people, farmers, craftsmen, merchants, and families who truly breathe life into an empire. What was it like to live in Akkad? During this golden age, Akkadian society was structured and clearly defined. At the very top was the king, revered as both a political ruler and a divine figure. He was the ultimate authority whose decrees and actions shaped the destiny of every citizen. Beneath him stood priests, nobles, and governors, who managed daily affairs, administered justice, and maintained order across the empire. Below this elite class, merchants and artisans formed an influential middle class. Merchants traded goods within Akkadian cities and beyond, bringing wealth and exotic items from distant lands. Craftsmen, meanwhile, created beautiful pottery, fine textiles, intricate jewelry, and advanced bronze tools and weapons, contributing to Akkadian prosperity and cultural identity. The largest group by far were the farmers and agricultural workers who cultivated the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. They planted barley, wheat, vegetables, and fruits, tended livestock, and maintained extensive irrigation systems. Their labor fed the empire, ensuring abundance and stability for all. At the bottom of Akkadian society were slaves, usually captives from conquered regions, or debtors unable to pay their obligations. While slaves performed difficult labor and had few rights, Akkadian society permitted them certain protections and occasionally opportunities to gain freedom through hard work or service. Life in Akkadian cities was vibrant and dynamic. Akkad itself, the empire's capital, bustled with activity. Narrow streets made of clay bricks wound through neighborhoods of houses, markets, and workshops. Houses were typically simple yet comfortable, constructed from mud bricks with flat rooftops used as living spaces during cooler evenings. Markets were central to urban life. Merchants shouted prices, buyers haggled over goods, and artisans displayed their finely crafted wares. Aromas of freshly baked bread, grilled meats, and spices filled the air. It was here that Akkadians gathered, exchanging news stories and gossip from distant corners of the empire. Temples towered over city skylines, their massive stepped structures, ziggurats dominating views. Priests conducted daily rituals, offering prayers, sacrifices, and ceremonies to ensure divine favor. Festivals dedicated to Inanna, the goddess of love and war, attracted crowds from every social class, binding communities together in celebration and shared devotion. Family life was central to Akkadian culture. Households usually included extended family members, parents, grandparents, children, aunts, and uncles, all sharing responsibilities. Men typically worked as farmers, craftsmen, or merchants, while women managed homes, raised children, prepared food, and produced textiles. Despite strict roles, women enjoyed certain rights, including the ability to own property and conduct business. Education was largely reserved for wealthier families, particularly the children of merchants, nobles, and priests. Boys studied writing, mathematics, religion, and administration in temple schools, learning the complex cuneiform script. They often trained as scribes, administrators, or priests. Girls, too, received basic education, learning household management, music, and occasionally reading and writing. Music and poetry enriched Akkadian life, enjoyed by everyone from kings to farmers. Musicians played lyres, drums, and flutes during religious festivals, weddings, and community gatherings. Poetry recounted heroic deeds, romantic tales, and religious hymns, often performed publicly by skilled storytellers, capturing imaginations and strengthening cultural identity. Clothing reflected social status and daily needs. Men typically wore woolen tunics or loincloths, while women dressed in long, flowing garments. Wealthier Akkadians adorned themselves with jewelry, necklaces, bracelets, earrings crafted from gold, silver, lapis lazuli, and precious stones, symbols of prosperity and social standing. Leisure activities included games such as dice and board games resembling early versions of backgammon. Athletic competitions, wrestling matches, and communal feasts brought people together regularly, creating bonds and friendships that strengthened the fabric of Akkadian society. Yet beneath this prosperity lay subtle tensions. Wealth disparities grew as trade and commerce thrived occasionally, leading to resentment among poorer citizens. Taxation imposed burdens on farmers and merchants alike, especially during periods of military expansion or construction projects. Though society generally remained stable, these undercurrents hinted at future challenges. Nevertheless, during this remarkable golden age, Akkadians of all backgrounds enjoyed prosperity, security, and cultural richness. They lived lives filled with hard work, vibrant social connections, deep religious devotion, and occasional leisure. It was a society that, despite its complexities, embodied the achievements of humanity's first great empire. However, this golden age could not last forever. In the years ahead, Akkad would face severe trials, internal divisions, environmental catastrophes, and external invasions that would challenge everything the empire had built, eventually threatening the stability and prosperity that Akkadians had come to treasure. Decline begins, internal conflicts and rebellions. As the Akkadian Empire flourished under Naram Sin's powerful reign, few could imagine that cracks were beginning to form beneath its prosperous surface. Yet by the final years of Naram Sin's rule around 2218 BCE, subtle tensions had already begun to emerge. The very foundations of the empire, political unity, economic stability, and cultural integration were slowly being tested. At first, these tensions appeared minor. Governors in distant provinces felt increasingly burdened by Akkadian taxes, military obligations, and administrative demands. The empire, stretching across vast territories from the Persian Gulf to Anatolia, required constant oversight. Communication between distant regions and Akkad took time, leaving local leaders frustrated by slow responses to their needs. Rebellions started small. A distant city might refuse to send tribute, or a local governor could quietly undermine Akkadian officials. Naram Sin responded swiftly and forcefully to these early signs of unrest, dispatching armies to restore order and punish disobedience. But each military response drained resources, exhausted soldiers, and created deeper resentment among conquered peoples. Internally, the empire began to experience political instability intensified by Naram Sin's bold claim of divinity. While many accepted his godlike status, others, particularly influential priests and local elites, felt alienated. Traditional religious leaders quietly resented Naram Sin's unprecedented elevation above the gods they revered. These simmering resentments threatened Akkadian unity, creating divisions that slowly grew more difficult to manage. After Naram Sin's death around 2218 BCE, the Akkadian throne passed to his son, Shar-Kali Shari. Unfortunately, Shar-Kali Shari lacked his father's charisma and decisive leadership. His reign was immediately tested by widespread unrest, rebellions, and political rivalries that had quietly built up during Naram Sin's later years. It soon became clear that the empire's stability was far more fragile than anyone had imagined. Rebellions erupted across Akkadian territories, often led by local governors who saw opportunity in the empire's vulnerability. Cities that had once willingly accepted Akkadian rule now rose against Shar-Kali Shari's authority. Powerful centers such as Uruk-Kish and Lagash asserted independence, openly defying Akkadian control. Responding to these rebellions was costly and difficult. Shar-Kali Shari dispatched Akkadian armies repeatedly to subdue revolts, but each victory came at great expense, draining the empire's treasury and exhausting its soldiers. Military campaigns disrupted trade and agriculture, causing economic hardship for ordinary Akkadians. Prosperity quickly gave way to uncertainty and scarcity. The empire's administration, once efficient and highly organized, began to falter. Communication lines broke down, governors stopped sending reports regularly, and taxes were collected sporadically or not at all. Shar-Kali Shari's grip on power weakened steadily, with governors and local leaders openly defying his commands. These internal conflicts severely damaged trade networks. Merchants fearful of instability and violence traveled less frequently. Markets, once vibrant and prosperous, saw fewer goods exchanged. Cities that had thrived on trade grew impoverished and isolated. Economic hardship fueled further discontent, creating a vicious cycle of rebellion and economic collapse. Culturally, the empire began to fracture. The sense of shared identity, carefully cultivated by Sargon and Naram Sin, through religion, language, and customs, began to erode. Local traditions regained prominence as central authority weakened. People increasingly turned to regional loyalties, undermining Akkadian unity and cohesion. Religious authority also suffered. Temples and priests who once supported Akkadian rule now asserted greater independence. Some openly criticized Shar-Kali Shari, blaming the empire's decline on his lack of divine favor. Religious festivals and ceremonies lost their unifying force, becoming arenas for political rivalry rather than shared devotion. As internal conflicts grew increasingly severe, Shar-Kali Shari faced an impossible challenge. Rebellions spread rapidly, each suppression more difficult and costly than the last. Governors openly declared independence, forming smaller regional alliances or returning to pre-Akkadian autonomy. The empire that had once unified Mesopotamia was fragmenting rapidly. By around 2190 BCE, internal struggles and rebellions had severely weakened the Akkadian Empire. While still formidable in name, its authority had diminished dramatically. The prosperous, unified civilization built by Sargon and expanded by Naram Sin was unraveling. Stability, trade, and cultural unity were fading memories as the empire descended into chaos. Yet internal turmoil was only one threat Akkad faced. As if rebellion and division weren't enough, a new and devastating challenge loomed on the horizon, an environmental catastrophe that would strike at the very heart of Akkadian survival, hastening its dramatic collapse. 11. Environmental catastrophe, drought, and famine. By around 2200 BCE, the Akkadian Empire faced more than political strife and internal rebellion. Nature itself now turned against Akkad, delivering a devastating blow that no human power could control. A catastrophic drought descended upon Mesopotamia, drying up rivers, withering crops, and plunging the region into famine and chaos. Mesopotamia's fertile lands owed their prosperity entirely to the life-giving waters of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. For centuries, predictable seasonal floods nourished the soil, allowing abundant crops of barley, wheat, fruits, and vegetables. But suddenly, around this time, those rivers began to fail. Historians and climate scientists today point to evidence found in ancient soil layers, ice cores, and written records. These sources indicate that Mesopotamia experienced severe climate shifts, years without rainfall, scorching heat, and drastically reduced river flows. It was an unprecedented environmental disaster, one that would prove catastrophic for Akkadian civilization. Initially, people tried desperately to adapt. Farmers dug deeper canals hoping to redirect scarce water to their drying fields. They planted drought-resistant crops, rationed food supplies, and prayed fervently to their gods for relief. But as weeks turned into months and months into years, the drought continued relentlessly, devastating agriculture and economy alike. With no harvests, grain stores dwindled rapidly. Cities once thriving centers of commerce saw their markets empty and streets filled with desperate, hungry citizens. Starvation became widespread. Families struggled daily to find enough food to survive, while children and the elderly suffered most from malnutrition and disease. Economic collapse swiftly followed. Merchants whose wealth depended on trade and surplus crops had nothing left to sell. Trade routes across Mesopotamia became ghost roads abandoned by traders, unwilling to risk travel amid growing desperation and violence. The vibrant economy built over generations ground to a halt, plunging the empire further into chaos. Mass migrations became common as people fled cities in search of food, water, and safety. Entire communities abandoned their homes, villages, and cities, leaving behind deserted ruins. Once thriving urban centers, symbols of Akkadian greatness, became empty shells inhabited only by memories and echoes. Social order broke down rapidly. The Akkadian administration, already weakened by rebellions and internal divisions, could not respond effectively. Governors lacked resources to distribute aid, while local officials struggled to maintain any semblance of authority. Lawlessness spread rapidly as desperate people turned against each other in the struggle for survival. In Akkad's temples, priests cried out to the gods for answers. Religious ceremonies intensified with desperate pleas for divine intervention. But no help came. Some began to believe the gods had abandoned Akkad, entirely punishing them for arrogance or sins committed by their rulers. Historical records from the period, carved onto clay tablets by desperate scribes, describe a land suffering profoundly. Poignant messages recorded the drying of fields, death of livestock, or collapse of trade and despair of citizens. They tell heartbreaking stories of once prosperous families reduced to poverty, hunger, and despair, offering a vivid glimpse into the empire's agony. The Akkadian rulers, first Shar-Kali Shari, and then his successors, tried desperately to maintain control, distributing dwindling food supplies and dispatching soldiers to quell unrest. But these efforts proved insufficient. With agriculture ruined, taxes unpaid, and armies weakened, the empire's central authority disintegrated further. As Akkadian power crumbled, neighboring regions seized opportunities to break away entirely. Provinces declared independence, cities asserted autonomy, and local leaders emerged to replace the collapsing Akkadian administration. Unity and cohesion, once Akkadian strengths, disappeared completely. The drought did not affect only Akkad. Neighboring regions also suffered, amplifying regional instability. Trade networks across the entire Middle East broke down, spreading economic hardship even further. What began as a natural disaster quickly transformed into a geopolitical crisis, reshaping the ancient world entirely. By around 2190 BCE, after years of relentless drought and famine, the Akkadian Empire stood at the brink of collapse. Its cities lay abandoned fields barren, and people scattered. Nature had delivered a decisive blow, accelerating the empire's fragmentation. Yet despite these severe trials, Akkad's final chapter had not yet been written. Already weakened by internal division and environmental catastrophe, the empire was now vulnerable to external threats. As Akkad struggled desperately for survival, fierce warriors from distant mountains began descending upon Mesopotamia warriors known as the Gutians. Their arrival would mark the final act in Akkad's dramatic decline and fall. 12. External threats, the Gutian invasion. As famine and drought battered the Akkadian Empire, leaving its cities weakened and its fields barren, another threat was rising beyond the eastern borders. This threat was not born from nature, but from the ambitions of a fierce and little-known people, the Gutians. The Gutians were mountain tribes who lived in the Zagros Mountains, a rugged range stretching along the eastern edge of Mesopotamia. For generations, they had watched the lowlands with both fear and fascination, knowing of Akkad's power, but also envious of its wealth. The environmental catastrophe that devastated Akkad did not affect the mountains as severely. In fact, the Gutians saw opportunity in the suffering of their southern neighbors. Around 2190 BCE, Gutian raiding parties began to cross into Akkadian territory. At first, their attacks were swift, targeted, and sporadic. They struck isolated villages and towns, stealing food, livestock, and valuables before retreating into the safety of their hills. These early raids went largely unchallenged. Akkadian soldiers, once the pride of Mesopotamia, were scattered and weakened, preoccupied with quelling internal rebellions, and desperate just to maintain order. The Gutians quickly realized the full extent of Akkad's vulnerability. Their raids grew bolder and more frequent. Gutian warriors skilled in guerrilla tactics and mountain warfare moved rapidly, evading Akkadian patrols and striking where defenses were weakest. The once unified Akkadian military could not mount a coordinated response. Many outposts and smaller cities fell with little resistance. Reports of Gutian incursions spread panic through the countryside. Refugees already suffering from hunger now fled in terror from violence and plunder. As Gutian forces moved deeper into Akkadian lands, they encountered little organized resistance. Governors and city leaders, cut off from the crumbling central administration, could not rally sufficient forces for defense. Some even surrendered without a fight, hoping to spare their people from further suffering. By the time Gutian armies reached major Akkadian cities, the empire's political and military power had all but evaporated. Akkad itself, once the magnificent imperial capital, was sacked. Its palaces, temples, and archives, symbols of Akkadian might, were plundered or destroyed. Other great cities such as Kish, Nippur, and Uruk suffered similar fates, their proud walls reduced to rubble by Gutian warriors. The impact of the Gutian invasion was devastating and far-reaching. What the drought and famine had begun, the Gutians finished. Trade collapsed completely. Farmlands were abandoned, towns emptied, and surviving populations scattered. The sophisticated systems of administration, communication, and governance built by Sargon and his descendants disappeared almost overnight. The Gutian conquest did not create a new stable order. Instead, Mesopotamia entered a period of chaos and fragmentation. The Gutians themselves were not interested in building a new empire or establishing strong central rule. Instead, they ruled as loosely organized chieftains, each controlling their own small territory. Local leaders and warlords rose up everywhere, further fragmenting what had once been the world's first empire. Yet in the midst of this collapse, the legacy of Akkad did not vanish entirely. Some cities survived, keeping fragments of Akkadian culture, law, and language alive. Priests and scribes hid precious tablets in temple archives, preserving the wisdom and stories of earlier times. Ordinary people carried with them memories of a more prosperous and united era, even as they struggled to survive under Gutian rule. For generations to come, the Gutians would be remembered in Mesopotamian history as bringers of chaos, a dark age that followed the brilliance of Akkad. And though the Akkadian Empire had fallen, its influence would echo across the centuries, inspiring later civilizations to dream of unity, greatness, and empire once again. 13. Fall of Akkad. End of the Empire, 2154 BCE. By the late 22nd century BCE, the once mighty Akkadian Empire was a shadow of its former self. The dream of unity and power that Sargon had built and that Naram-Sin had brought to its golden peak was unraveling rapidly. Decades of famine, rebellion, and relentless Gutian attacks had drained the empire's strength. The city of Akkad itself, once the beating heart of Mesopotamia, now lay ruined, its palaces and temples deserted, its markets silent. Shar-Kali-Shari, the last significant Akkadian king, fought bravely to hold the empire together. He led campaigns against rebels and tried desperately to push back the Gutians. But his resources were limited. Army ranks had thinned due to years of warfare and starvation. Supplies were almost impossible to secure. Even loyal governors struggled just to feed their own people, let alone contribute soldiers and grain to the central administration. After Shar-Kali-Shari's death, around 2193 BCE, the empire slid further into chaos. The royal line fractured, and rival claimants fought for the throne. Records from this period are scattered and confused evidence of the disorder that reigned. Some chronicles mention a series of short-lived, ineffective rulers. None could command loyalty or restore order. The Gutians, for their part, cared little for Akkadian traditions or institutions. They plundered what remained, neglected the great canals and irrigation works, and allowed cities to decay. Without strong leadership, Mesopotamia's vital infrastructure, the very backbone of its agricultural and economic life, fell into ruin. The land became less productive each year, worsening famine and despair. Cities that had once glittered with culture and trade now struggled just to survive. Some, like Ur and Lagash, managed to maintain a fragile independence by striking deals with Gutian chieftains. Most others fell into obscurity. Trade all but vanished as merchants dared not risk travel through bandit-haunted roads and devastated countryside. Religious life, too, changed profoundly. Temples, once centers of both worship and administration, found their influence shrinking. Priests could not maintain grand rituals without support from rulers and prosperous citizens. Many sacred statues and temple treasures were looted or lost. Ordinary people, desperate for survival, often turned to local spirits or new gods, seeking comfort in a chaotic world. Social order broke down. The distinctions that had defined Akkadian society, king, priest, merchant, farmer, blurred in the struggle to endure. Laws once enforced across the empire by scribes and officials became unenforceable. Local customs replaced imperial edicts. Each community fended for itself, cut off from the wider world that Sargon and his heirs had once unified. By 2154 BCE, the Gutian chieftains controlled most of Mesopotamia, but not as true rulers. Their authority was unstable, challenged constantly by local resistance and infighting among themselves. Mesopotamia entered a dark age where knowledge faded, order vanished, and survival was a daily struggle. Yet even in this darkness, the Akkadian legacy was not entirely erased. Some scribes continued to copy ancient stories and hymns, preserving fragments of Akkadian language and wisdom. Priests quietly maintained old rituals, waiting for a day when stability might return. And in the memories of the people, the greatness of Akkad lived on a distant beacon from a lost golden age. So ended the Akkadian Empire, not with a single catastrophic event, but with a slow, painful unraveling. Its fall would haunt the region for generations. But the seeds it planted in administration, language, law, and culture would one day give rise to new powers and a renewed Mesopotamian civilization. 14. Legacy and influence of the Akkadian Empire. Though the Akkadian Empire fell into ruin by 2154 BCE, its story did not end with the sack of Akkad or the scattering of its people. Instead, the empire's legacy lived on, woven into the fabric of Mesopotamian civilization and the history of the world. The echoes of Akkad continued to shape kingdoms, cultures, and empires for centuries to come. First and foremost, the Akkadian language became the common tongue of Mesopotamia and much of the ancient Near East for nearly 1,000 years after the fall of the empire. As both a spoken and written language, Akkadian replaced Sumerian as the language of government, trade, and literature. Scribes, merchants, and diplomats from Egypt to Anatolia learned Akkadian cuneiform to communicate, do business, and record their laws. Even when other peoples, Babylonians, Assyrians, Elamites, rose to power, they preserved and built upon the language that Sargon and his successors had spread. The concept of empire itself, of unifying diverse peoples under one powerful ruler, was an Akkadian innovation. Sargon's model of centralized administration, with governors and bureaucrats reporting to the capital, became the template for all later Mesopotamian kingdoms. Babylonian and Assyrian kings adopted Akkadian techniques of governance, taxation, and record-keeping, striving to emulate the unity and authority of Akkad. Akkadian kings also pioneered the use of monumental inscriptions and art as political tools. From the victory stele of Naram Sin to countless clay tablets, the Akkadians left behind records that future kings would imitate, boasting of their conquests and divine favor. This practice of royal propaganda, using words and images to shape public memory, became standard across the ancient world. Religion, too, was forever altered by Akkadian rule. The empire's strategy of religious integration, adopting and blending local gods, promoting shared festivals, and portraying the king as divinely chosen, outlasted Akkad itself. Later empires embraced these methods, building temples and hosting festivals that united people of many backgrounds. Even the idea of kingship as a sacred duty bestowed by the gods can be traced back to Akkadian ideology. Culturally, the Akkadians preserved and transmitted the literary heritage of Sumer. They translated Sumerian hymns, myths, and epics into Akkadian, ensuring that foundational stories like the Epic of Gilgamesh survived and inspired later generations. Akkadian scribes continued to write on clay tablets, maintaining traditions of education and scholarship that would carry into the Babylonian and Assyrian eras. Akkad's architectural and technological innovations also endured. Techniques in city planning, irrigation, bronze metallurgy, and road construction were passed down and improved upon by successor states. The great ziggurats and palaces built in Akkadian times inspired future rulers to construct ever more ambitious monuments to their own power. Even in decline, the Akkadian story served as a lesson for future kings and empires. The dangers of overextension, harsh rule, and environmental neglect became warnings passed down through the ages. Later rulers remembered the fate of Akkad and sought to avoid its mistakes, though not always successfully. Ultimately, the Akkadian Empire's most lasting legacy was the dream of unity. For the first time in history, a single government had bound together people of different languages, customs, and lands. That achievement, however brief, set a precedent for what humanity could accomplish when vision, leadership, and innovation combined. And so, even as the empire itself faded into history, the world continued to be shaped by its memory. The Akkadian legacy would help to build the foundation for future civilizations, leaving an indelible mark on the story of humankind. 15. Archaeological rediscovery unveiling. Akkad's secrets. For centuries after its collapse, the Akkadian Empire was remembered only in scattered legends, cryptic inscriptions, and the faded memories of later Mesopotamian peoples. The great city of Akkad itself was eventually lost to the sands of time. Its exact location became a mystery whispered about in ancient texts, but invisible to those who searched the plains and riverbanks where it once thrived. It wasn't until the dawn of modern archaeology in the 19th and 20th centuries that the lost world of Akkad began to reemerge. Adventurers, scholars, and explorers from Europe and the Middle East set out to uncover the secrets buried beneath the soil of Iraq, driven by curiosity, ambition, and the hope of rewriting history. The first clues came from the great ruins of Babylon, Nineveh, and Nippur. Among the crumbling bricks and fallen statues, archaeologists discovered thousands of clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform writing. Many of these texts, when painstakingly translated, mentioned Sargon Sin and the great deeds of the Akkadian kings. For the first time in millennia, the names of Akkadian rulers echoed in the modern world. Excavations at sites like Tel Brak, Tel Leilan, and Sippar unearthed remains of Akkadian buildings, fortifications, and administrative centers. Pottery seals, weapons, and statues crafted in the unmistakable Akkadian style were carefully catalogued and studied. Among the most significant discoveries was the Victory Stele of Naram Sin, a masterwork of ancient art showing the king leading his soldiers up a mountainside crowned by the stars of the gods. Each artifact, each inscription was a window into the life of a vanished civilization. Tablets recorded laws, business transactions, and royal proclamations. Lists of kings and dynasties helped archaeologists piece together the chronology of Akkad and its neighbors. Hymns and prayers revealed the empire's religious devotion, while administrative records detailed the daily routines of an ancient bureaucracy. Despite decades of searching, the true site of Akkad itself remains elusive. Generations of archaeologists have scoured the plains north of Babylon, debating which mound might hide the remains of Sargon's fabled capital. Though the city is still lost, the discoveries surrounding it have been enough to paint a vivid portrait of Akkadian society and its achievements. Modern scientific methods, satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and advanced dating techniques have further illuminated the Akkadian world. Climate studies have confirmed the great drought that helped destroy the empire, while genetic analysis of ancient remains reveals how diverse Akkadian society truly was. Museums from Baghdad to London now display Akkadian artifacts, delicate cylinder seals, bronze weapons, carved statues, and clay tablets, connecting people today with the world's first empire. Students and scholars continue to translate Akkadian texts, bringing new stories, laws, and histories to light every year. Archaeology has done more than recover objects. It has revived the story of Akkad, restoring the empire's place in human history. Where once there were only myths and silence, now there are names, faces, and voices, real people who once lived, dreamed, and shaped the ancient world. The rediscovery of Akkad is not only a triumph of science and scholarship, it is a testament to humanity's longing to understand its origins and remember the civilizations that came before. Each discovery invites us to look back, reflect, and recognize how deeply connected we are to the distant past and to the enduring legacy of the Akkadian Empire. 16. Akkad in popular culture and historical imagination. The story of the Akkadian Empire, long buried beneath the sands of time, has found new life in the imagination of the modern world. Today, Akkad's legacy is not just a matter for historians and archaeologists. It is woven into novels, films, documentaries, and even video games, capturing the public's fascination with the ancient past. Writers and artists are drawn to the dramatic rise and fall of the world's first empire. The story of Sargon, born a commoner and raised to become king, reads like a timeless legend. His journey from humble origins to imperial founder inspires stories of ambition, resilience, and destiny. Modern authors have reimagined Sargon's life in epic novels, children's books, and historical fiction, breathing new color into the ancient tale. The Akkadian Empire's grandeur, its towering ziggurats, bustling cities, and mighty armies, has become a favorite setting for filmmakers and game developers seeking to transport audiences to a mysterious and magnificent era. Documentaries explore the empire's history, dramatizing key events like the conquest of Sumer, the rule of Naram-Sin, and the final descent into chaos. Animation and digital reconstructions bring Akkadian temples, palaces, and streets to life, allowing viewers to walk virtually through the heart of ancient Mesopotamia. In video games, Akkad often appears as a powerful civilization to command or conquer. Players build empires, manage resources, wage wars, and forge alliances, drawing loosely on the real history of Sargon and his successors. These games, though not always historically accurate, help introduce new generations to the ancient world, sparking curiosity and encouraging deeper exploration of history. The myths and legends preserved by Akkadian scribes have also seeped into broader culture. The Epic of Gilgamesh, originally composed in Sumerian and preserved by Akkadian writers, is now studied in classrooms around the world. Themes of friendship, heroism, loss, and the search for meaning remain deeply resonant, proving that stories from millennia ago still speak to the human experience today. Even the name Akkad carries a sense of mystery and lost grandeur. It appears in science fiction and fantasy as the symbol of a forgotten age and empire whose ruins hold secrets and treasures waiting to be uncovered. For many, Akkad represents the enduring dream of building something that lasts even as time moves relentlessly forward. Yet popular culture does not always get the details right. Sargon's exploits are sometimes exaggerated, Akkadian society oversimplified, or Gutian invaders demonized. But these embellishments are a testament to the power of the Akkadian story. The empire's saga is so compelling that it invites retelling and reinvention, each version revealing something about the storyteller and their own time. For historians and educators, Akkad offers a powerful entry point into the study of ancient civilizations. Its story raises timeless questions. What does it mean to lead? Why do empires rise and fall? How do ordinary people shape history? And how do we remember them? Museums, documentaries, and educational programs continue to share these lessons, making the Akkadian Empire relevant for new audiences in every age. In the end, the Akkadian Empire lives on not just in the ruins of ancient cities or the lines of clay tablets, but in the living imagination of people everywhere. Its history, its myths, and its lessons endure as part of humanity's shared heritage, inviting us to dream, to question, and to wonder at the achievements and the fragility of those who came before us. 17. Reflections on Empire Lessons from Akkad. The rise and fall of the Akkadian Empire is more than just a story from the distant past. It is a powerful reflection on the nature of power, the challenges of unity, and the cycles that shape human history. As we look back on Akkad's triumphs and tragedies, we discover lessons that are as relevant today as they were 4,000 years ago. Akkad's founding was an act of vision and courage. Sargon's ambition to unite warring city-states brought peace, order, and prosperity to a land long plagued by conflict. His example reminds us that progress often depends on those willing to imagine a different world and to work relentlessly to make it real. But the Akkadian Empire also warns us that unity achieved through force can be fragile. Without mutual respect and wise governance, an empire can quickly become a house divided. The innovations of the Akkadian era, standing armies, standardized laws, common language, and organized administration, laid the groundwork for future civilizations. They show the power of structure planning and communication in building a strong society. Yet these same systems require constant attention, adaptation, and renewal. As later generations of Akkadian rulers discovered, neglect or corruption can quickly erode even the most impressive institutions. Akkad's prosperity was rooted in its ability to harness the land and its people's talents. Trade, agriculture, and industry thrived under strong leadership and stable conditions. But the empire's decline reveals the dangers of overextension and environmental neglect. When the climate shifted and famine struck, the empire's rigid systems could not adapt quickly enough. This disaster, more than any army or rebellion, proved fatal. The lesson is clear: true strength comes from resilience, flexibility, and the capacity to respond wisely to change. Culturally, the Akkadian experiment in religious and social integration offered both inspiration and warning. By respecting local traditions and promoting shared values, the empire created a vibrant, diverse society. But attempts to impose new religious or political ideas from above could provoke unrest and alienation. Genuine unity depends on dialogue, inclusion, and understanding, not just decree or force. The fall of Akkad also shows the unpredictability of history. No empire, however mighty, is immune to the forces of nature or the tides of change. Drought, invasion, internal dissent, any one of these can test the limits of human achievement. Akkad's fate reminds us that humility is essential and that every civilization must be vigilant, wise, and compassionate if it hopes to endure. Yet the story of Akkad is not simply a tale of loss. Its legacy of innovation, ambition, and shared identity outlasted the empire itself. Akkad's ideas and institutions shaped generations of rulers, scholars, and dreamers. Its achievements echo through history, a testament to what people can accomplish together, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As we reflect on the Akkadian Empire, we are invited to ask difficult questions. What does it mean to rule justly? How do we balance unity and diversity? How can we build societies that are strong, yet flexible, prosperous, yet compassionate? Akkad's story challenges us to look both backward and forward, to learn from the past, to recognize our own strengths and vulnerabilities, and to strive for a future where the lessons of history guide us toward wisdom, resilience, and hope. 18. The Eternal Echoes of Akkad. As our journey through the story of the Akkadian Empire comes to a close, let us pause and listen to the echoes of this ancient world. The empire that rose from the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers was not just the first of its kind. It was a bold experiment in what it means to be united to govern and to dream beyond the boundaries of the familiar. Akkad's story is the story of humanity itself, our capacity to create, to organize, to strive for greatness, and to face adversity. We have walked the crowded markets of Akkad, climbed the steps of its towering temples, and marched with its armies across desert and mountain. We have seen how vision and courage can forge something new, and how pride or misfortune can bring even the greatest endeavors to an end. The lessons of Akkad are not locked in the past. They live in the structures of government, the spread of language and culture, and the ways we seek meaning and connection in our own time. The empire's fall reminds us that nothing is permanent, yet. Its legacy teaches that our actions, our innovations, and our stories can outlast even the mightiest cities and kings. From the clay tablets buried in ruined cities to the tales told in classrooms and libraries, the Akkadian Empire endures not only as a chapter in history books, but as a living idea. It is a testament to ambition, to resilience, and to the hope that binds communities across time and space. So as you drift into sleep, let the story of Akkad settle gently in your thoughts. Remember that the world we inherit was shaped by countless generations, by the dreamers, builders, and storytellers of every age. The eternal echoes of Akkad remind us to cherish our history, to honor our achievements, and to keep alive the spirit of curiosity and wonder that leads us ever onward. Good night, and may the timeless whispers of the world's first empire guide you on your own journey wherever it may lead.